Right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about fungicide resistance today. I think it was very nice to hear the panel at the beginning, just explaining or giving those overviews on the regions. There were very important points in there that probably you're going to see in this presentation as well. All right, so many of you, I know some of you, some others I don't, and that's great because you probably get something out of this that you haven't seen yet. But for those that I know already, so you probably have seen this slide quite often. I like presenting it because it gives an overview of where we have found resistance. This doesn't basically indicate how much do we have per region or the exact location, but it gives you an idea per state, right? So in South Australia it's actually quite up rare, with in terms of different resistant cases that have been found. So you can probably see here that we've got three different acronyms. This L stands for lab detection. This is a detection in the lab only. We don't have resistance in the field, okay? Then you've got this RS, reduced sensitivity, okay, or reduced sensitive. So we've got a small decline in the efficacy of the fungicide in the field, all right, but no field failure, okay? And then we've got resistance. And this is when we've got field failure, right? Fungicides are not controlling diseases anymore, okay? And recently, somebody in the panel said earlier, I think that was Jana, so we've got this QY resistance in South Australia that was reported by BASF last year. Why is it not moving? Okay, so we are in the process of updating the ratings for fungicide resistance. We've got a management guide, okay, as part of the AHRI investment of Australian Fungicide Resistance Extension Network, and we are given ratings for the different fungicides and the different diseases. This is very simple. So we've got, again, this lab detection, reduced sensitivity and resistance as purple, orange, and red dots, okay? Now, something I want to clarify here. If you see a red dot, for example, in South Australia for fluxo peroxide, okay, particular disease, we're talking about net for net blotch, that doesn't mean that fluxo peroxide doesn't work in the entire state, okay? So I had, that question many times. That only means that we have found resistance in South Australia, and we have basically confirmed that in some paddocks it didn't work. And now I'll talk a little bit about this because it's important in the next few slides. Okay, so towards probably, I was going to say towards the end of the year, we're already in the end of the year, but probably around the end of January or beginning of February, the new updated guide will be available, so you can download it. So these ratings are already on our website, so you can download them already. Okay, so why do we have a problem? And if you have been attending these forums before, and from what you have heard this morning, you probably already know that the problem is that. Okay, so we use a lot of pesticides because they are basically what we need in order to get the crop going, right? So this is highly intensive agriculture, and we need them in order to just get a profit at the end of the day. Okay, so but obviously the use of fungicides, the use of pesticides in general, well, they do what they are intended to do. They select for resistance, they control diseases, but at the same time they select for resistance because that resistance is already there in the nature. Okay, so but actually using fungicides is not the only factor that contributes to resistance. So it's actually one of the least factors that contributes to resistance, or not resistance, I would say fungicide failure, okay? When a fungicide doesn't work in the field, normally we talk about fungicide resistance, but actually in only a small fraction of the cases, fungicide resistance is responsible for that, okay? We need a few factors to happen at the same time in order for fungicide resistance to be responsible for that, okay? So lack of genetic resistance, we tend to use very susceptible varieties, and this is something that we have to change, right? And there were questions here in the panel earlier today about, how difficult it's actually to change, that mindset, okay? So we grow what we know how to grow, and I have had, this feedback several times in the field, okay? So if I know how to grow Trojan, right, with variety Trojan, quite susceptible to weed powdery mildew, this is when I'm gonna grow, and if it is profitable, even better, okay? Poor IDM. There are many different mechanisms, going back to the basics, many different methods that we can deploy in order to control diseases, to avoid using too many fungicides, which in the end, put a lot of selection pressure on the emergence of resistance. So using the wrong product at the wrong time, poor coverage, We were talking about coverage earlier as well, okay? So this is also, these are important factors involving, fungicide failure. They're still not related to fungicide resistance, okay? But ultimately, the one that is most important to me, if it comes out at some point, conducive season, all right? And there were comments earlier, during the panel session. So dry weather will sort it out. Yeah, that's very true. Dry weather is the best fungicide, okay? But also, lack of rain means, lower yields. So conducive season, right, is basically what we need in order to have that perfect storm. When we've got all those elements together, then fungicide resistance is a problem. If you don't have a conducive season, if you're using your products properly, if your IDM strategies are fine, okay, if you're using a resistant variety, then you shouldn't worry about fungicide resistance, okay. Probably I'm too far from there. Right, so how bad is the problem? Okay, so you're probably, for many of you that are South Australian based, so spot form blotch is not a big issue, okay? But in other places it is. So this is these are paddocks, so this is a paddock that was treated with all that, okay? And despite of that, it was looking that bad. And probably you would agree with me that that's not what a crop should look like after those treatments. At that sort of growth stage, 2 shots of propiconazole, okay, roughly U39, U52, the crop should look like that, okay? So that's practical resistance, and this is what we're talking about. So conditions are basically really conducive to disease. We've got resistance in there, fungicides don't work, okay? Fungicides are not silver bullets, right? They've got a limit, okay? Keep going. Okay, so something that we've been talking a lot about, and that actually Sam was referring to earlier, was SDHI resistance in blotches. This is a spot form blotch again, okay? And you can see that actually quite clearly that when we've got a sensitive isolate or a sensitive population on a spot form blotch, and we treat it with fluxoperoxide, okay? So it controls it beautifully. Our plants are clean, but when we've got a resistant population, right? It doesn't actually do much compared to the untreated, okay? This is what we're talking about when we talk about resistance, and this is out there, okay? Right, but probably something more down the alley is net for net blotch. All right, so let's gonna play a little game here. I don't have clickers, I don't have QR codes here. I'm an old-fashioned, right? So one of those plots has been treated with a lot of stuff. The other one hasn't. Now, can you show me hands here? Little show hands. How many of you think that the picture on your left-hand side has been treated? So everybody else think that the picture on the right-hand side have been treated. Is that right? Or you don't care, you don't know? You don't care, you don't know. Pastors. Okay, all right. Did I say that? Sorry. I promise the organizers that I will be swearing in Spanish, so you wouldn't understand me, but sorry, Okay, I told you that I've been treated with a lot of stuff. Fluxoperoxide, citrusing, epoxyconazole and paracostrobin, right? 500 mils per hectare. Pixafen and proficonazole, flagship treatment, right? Propiconazole, and it's still looking pretty bad. All right, so I don't know how you do it, but actually, yeah. So this one was the one treated. This one was the one untreated. Okay. So as you can see, diseases are not very affected by all these treatments. And to be honest with you, if you put all these treatments into this paddock and you see this response, you fired agronomist probably, maybe. Okay. So this is resistance. Okay. And again, just a reminder, this is what a crop should look like after 2 treatments of cheap chemistry, propiconazole. Okay, this was a picture that I took a month ago in Victoria. Okay, right. So even worse. So we talk about sensitivity, reduced sensitivity, so a small shift in sensitivity or efficacy of the fungicide and resistance. But actually, under the right conditions, and I'm going to be talking a lot about this, this asterisk, under the right conditions. So reduced sensitive populations, this yellow line here, behave like if we have resistance. Okay. And this is really problematic because that shouldn't be the case. That only means that because we are doing everything else wrong, using very susceptible varieties, poor IDM, right? Using cheap chemistry, so these populations got a chance. and they behave as if they were resistant. Okay, so the big problem is when we've got high frequency levels of these populations, then is when actually, resistance just, shows up, and it's hard to control. Okay. So how do we know this? So we have conducted big trials around different states. And that heading that I've got there, if you have a problem in a region, conduct a trial. If you have been conducting trials for diseases, you know what I'm talking about. So you try to conduct 3 trials, you need probably 7 seasons because, 5 out of those 7 is dry weather, you don't have disease, okay? So you deploy the trial, disease basically fades away. So what we have developed, I cannot click on it, but this was a video. Maybe I can. So we have developed a little system just to guarantee that we always have the right conditions for disease. Remember, the right conditions is basically what matters here. It's just, sort of misters connected to a water tank, and, we just generate the right canopy conditions for disease to basically express. Now, when we guarantee that there is high disease pressure, we inoculate with different frequencies of our resistant isolates, and then we can basically measure what's the effect, right? So what's the efficacy of the different fungicides on those populations that are, just under the right conditions, okay? Because as I was saying earlier, so we've got also QI resistance in the fornip blotch, okay? Now, it is unclear what the resistance basically means. We talk about resistance, but actually it doesn't translate into field resistance, all right? So we still don't know. So this was a mutation that has been previously described overseas, and that was discovered by BASF, as I was saying, last year. Right, so we also had comments earlier on weed powdery mildew, right? So unfortunately, weed powdery mildew has become very resistant to different chemistries in the eastern states, not in Western Australia, right? For reasons that we still don't understand. But in the eastern states, so we've got resistance to propiconazole and all the QIs, okay? So I've got some plants here, Trojan plants, susceptible variety, right? Treated with a wild type isolate, okay? And 1 full rate of propiconazole, the plants are totally clean, okay? Then we've got propiconazole, same cultivar, but this time we've got resistant isolate, and you can see all the white pustules all over the place after a full rate treatment, right? And then twice the rate, which you cannot do, you know that, right? 2 rates of the same propiconazole, and you still have powdery mildew there, 3 weeks after that shot, powdery mildew is all over the place again, okay? So I've said here propiconazole, but we've got the same graph, pretty much mirroring this graph for bixafen and prothioconazole. I don't want to say prothioconazole doesn't control mildew because we haven't got that experiment by itself just with prothioconazole yet. We just received a sample of straight prothioconazole, and we're going to be testing that very soon. Okay, you probably also heard about the work that Sam Turngrove and others have been conducting with powdery mildew. This shows where the resistance to QOI fungicide is actually at the moment, but don't get alarmed. Red means good in this case, okay? So it's the other way around, and blue means bad, okay? So basically what we've got is a gradient here. So the more we move further to the east, so we've got more resistance to QOI fungicides with powdery mildew, all right? There's some pockets of nasty populations around here, the north of the York Peninsula, right? And this is meant to spread with the more, that we use QOI chemistries because they select very quickly for fungicide resistance in this pathogen, okay? Now, what's the spread of the AMI resistance? It's pretty much everywhere, okay? So it's very hard to find sensitive populations, DMI sensitive populations, in any of the eastern states, okay? Very hard. We still find some, but very hard. Okay, Septoria. I keep saying the organizers that probably we should have this meeting in February because that will give me time to analyze all the data, right? So this is data from the last year. Unfortunately, I don't have the data for Septoria yet. I've got 2 groups of chemistries here together. So we've got QOIs in blue and yellow. Blue means all right, okay, and yellow means bad. There was also a comment from the panel on QI resistance in Septoria. So there have been 3 detections only, 2 in South Australia and 1 in Tasmania, that is bad in itself because we've got the resistance, but it's good because it's quite contained and it's quite limited. Now, experience tells us that, or past experiences tell us that we've got this resistance in Europe, and it has been spreading very quickly. Okay, not only QI resistance, but also SDHR resistance. All right. For DMI chemistries, green means okay, so no resistance whatsoever. Red means reduced sensitivity. We don't have full resistance in Septoria, so we only have reduced sensitivity. But as you can see, the trend is quite clear, so it's all over the place, right? Now we will have at some point full resistance because it has happened already, in other countries overseas. Okay, so it's a matter of time. If we don't slow it down, long enough, so that other chemistries can actually come online. So I think that this is enough of bad news, right? So I think that you had enough. So we've got resistance in many pathosystems, right? And that's concerning. But there's a lot of stuff that can be done in order to sort it out. Okay? So if you're not familiar with these 5 rules, get familiar with them. Because they're super basic. You're already doing them most of the times, right? But maybe in isolation. Try to combine, try to mix up, right? Try to meet as many as you can of these 5. And I guarantee that fungicide resistance will not be a problem for you or your clients. Okay? So number 1, very simple, avoid susceptible crop varieties. I know it's hard. I've been told that in the field. I'm coming from a farming background, right? So my family farmed what basically they were comfortable with. The same happens here, the same happens everywhere. I grow this variety because I know that I can grow it very well. The logistics are simple, right? Because I know them. And on top of that, it's profitable. So it's hard to change a mindset. But the minute that you improve the tolerance to disease, right? So you're just going down a number of steps, in the amount of chemicals that you need to put in there, all right? So rotate crops. I know as well that it's hard to actually have, healthy or long rotations in some instances, especially, when in regions like your peninsula, lentils are really profitable. But it's the best way to control diseases. It's the best way to reset the system. You've got resistance to a particular disease, change a crop, you won't have that problem anymore. Now, Ascochyta becomes resistant very quickly to fungicides. You just need to search in the literature. You'll see that, in Canada, that at the top in terms of resistance, right? So Australia is not different. It will happen. It's meant to happen. And there is a map that is going to be, or a tool that is going to be showcased later on. Next year, you'll see where the resistance in Ascochyta lentis is actually sitting, right? In South Australia, all right? So it's increasing, and that's a problem, all right? So reduce disease pressure using non-chemical control methods. There are different things that we can do there as well, not just rotations, right? I know I'm basically, I like, I'm a green supporter, right? I like all green, no political party, sorry, I'm not talking about politics here. But, burning is a very good option in terms of disease management. There's no resistance to fire, right? So we burn, we reset the system, right? But we burn strategically, okay? So there are different things that we can do there as well. Delay sowing, right? So reduce disease rates, right? So there are different things that we can do in order to make, the whole thing a bit more difficult for diseases, right? Spray only if necessary and apply strategically. So the less we spray, right, the less we're selecting for resistance. So if you can delay when you spray, if you can stop, just following a program application, right, rather than, just following instead an application that is guided by the amount of disease that you've got in the paddock, that's going to be gold in terms of delaying the onset of resistance, right? And rotate and mix fungicides. This is the same as with any pesticide. You can rotate chemistries. You don't have many options, but you can rotate them, right? Okay, how are we doing with time? So what was that?
Maybe a couple of minutes.
Couple of minutes, all right, okay. So then I've got time for this. I want to show you this slide. I don't know if you have shown it already, this slide before. It was produced by one of our collaborators, Noel Knight. So I want to draw your attention to 3 different paddocks, okay, here. So these paddocks were growing 2 different varieties side by side. No fence, no roads in the middle, so they were side by side, okay. Planet in this case, Maximus in this case, right? So this is disease level. You can see, the jump in disease level just by changing variety. So as you can imagine, how many fungicide shots I'm going to need in order to control this, as opposed to controlling this. So resistance basically just goes hand by hand, with the level of resistance of your variety. Okay. So same occurs, for these other instances. Okay. So genetic resistance is a very important tool, all right, if we want to manage resistance to our fungicides. Okay. So download the guide that is available for managing fungicide resistance. This guide is currently being updated, as I was saying. It will be available, the new version of the guide will be available end of January, beginning of February. In the meantime, you can go into this website, Australian Fungicide Resistance Extension Network, and you can click on resources here, and there's a lot of information there available for you to basically, just get an understanding on how to manage fungicide resistance in a better way. But again, the basics, you already know them, okay? We organize a lot of workshops and field activities. These workshops are basically in all the different states. Field activities, we come to you, right? If you call us, if you've got a field day and you want us to come there and talk to you people, to your clients, to your employees, we will, okay? So just let us know. And do I have anything else here? So a few take-home messages there, but probably I'm going to leave them up so for you to read them because I can see that Ken is getting a bit nervous with time. So yeah, thank you very much. If you've got any questions, I'm very happy to answer them.